With this video, I want to show you how to modify properties of objects both individually and globally. To demonstrate or introduce you to properties, we set color individually, we set line weight individually, we set line type individually, and that controlled how everything shows up as we draw it until we change that to something else. And then we vowed to never use that again, and I'm going to hold you to that. We typically will control properties on a pi layer basis. We go up here and use the drop down list and make a different layer current and use all the properties, color, line type, and line weight as assigned to the layers. Usually. Now, every now and then we do have to override a layer property, and to do that, we simply select an object and then go up here and change whatever we want to do to change it. We'll make that orange. Okay, now you can see it's still on the object layer. It's still got that line weight, but it's got an override on the color saying that it's some shade of orange right now. If you see, I can hover over it, and I've got information being shown to me when I hover over an object, any object. Typically, all of these are going to say its color is by layer, and it'll show you a little swatch showing you what color is truly assigned to that layer, but no number associated with it. If it's overridden, then its individual color will be shown on there. Now, again, we rarely will do that. I always like my objects to be by layer, and if you see, if I highlight a whole pile of them, now because the color is not by layer for all of these objects, it just is left blank. With quick properties, which we'll talk about in more detail in a minute, you can see that it puts the word varies in there. Up here, it just doesn't. It just leaves it blank. But I can use this to say, you know what, I need to fix everything. I need to have everything controlled by layer because that's what we really should be doing. After I pre-select objects like this, to let them go, you hit the escape key, and we're off and running. We can move objects from one layer to another. If I wanted to pick all of these, I can pick them, and it'll show me that they are on the dimensions layer. If I pull this down and pick hidden, they go onto the hidden layer and take all the color, line type, and line weight properties assigned to the hidden layer. So just like in Microsoft Word, you can highlight something and change the text height or the font that's being used. You can highlight something in AutoCAD and pick the layer, pull down, and put it on a different layer, or the color, line weight, or line type options and change them. But we should rarely be doing that. We also have the ability to see our objects on a per layer basis. Let's say for some reason or other, I don't need to see any of my hidden lines in a drawing. So what I can do is I can go up here and pick off and then select something on a particular layer, and all of those layers or all of those objects on that layer are turned off. The layer is turned off so I can't see it. If I wanted to see all my layers again, I just pick this button right here, and that turns all layers back on. We also have the ability to make objects invisible by freezing, and I hit enter to be done with that, and they all get frozen, and frozen makes them invisible also. I pick this button, and that thaws them, and that makes all our layers visible once again. So on and off and freeze and thaw make things visible and invisible. How does that affect things? If I'm going to pick this circle, which I left on layer 0, which we should rarely be using. We should almost always use some layer that is current with our system. How does that affect things? If I double click the wheel to zoom the extents, of course that ends up tight to the screen, and this ends up tight to the screen. If my drawing was wider than what it is, then those objects might end up tight to the edges of the screen. You get the idea. It zooms to the extents of our objects. Now, if I were to turn off a layer that happens to be at the extents of the screen, if I double-click the wheel, the graphics card or the graphic engine inside of AutoCAD still worries about those objects that are turned off. I will turn everything back on again, and then I will freeze it by picking it and hit enter to be done with that command. If I now double click the wheel to zoom the extents, the graphics card ignores objects that are frozen, but it still considers objects that are turned off. So I will go back here and thaw all of our layers and double click the wheel, and yeah, we can see that object again. So we have options up here. One other thing that we use is this lock option. If I pick lock and I grab an object on a certain layer, notice that they kind of go a little bit dimmer, and what also has happened is that they're locked. You see if I highlight this, the information about that object shows up. If I hover over this object, you get a little lock symbol next to there. What locked means is it means I can't edit it. If I were to say, grab all this stuff and I hit the delete key to delete them, I can't delete anything or modify anything on a locked layer. So I'll just go up here and unlock everything, and then I'll use my unlock. It doesn't unlock everything because I can still see it. It gives me the chance to pick it, and I unlock that layer. And then I'm going to use my oops command. If you recall from a previous video, oops is like an undo specific to erase. It brings back all my objects. I am going to erase this one, and then zoom extents, and then we'll come back to it. Now, I can use these buttons right here to individually pick and point at objects that need to be turned off or frozen, or turn everything back on, or thaw everything again. Or I can actually use the layer properties box if I wanted to handle that more on a, this layer, that layer, not point at something. I have these options in here. This is my on option. This is my freeze option. So I can say, turn off the center line layer and turn off the hidden line layer. And what I like to do is with these palettes is I like to right click and make sure allow docking is turned on, and I'm going to pick anchor to the left. And anchoring it to the left makes it show up here. Now I don't have to pick this to make it appear. It's always there, and I just have to kind of hover over the edge, and that dialog box or that palette pops out again, and I can pick this, turn things back on and off. So I have the ability to turn on and turn off, freeze and thaw, and lock and unlock inside of here also. Depends upon what you want to do on a named layer basis, or point and shoot with these buttons. Let's see, what's the other thing? Oh, match layer. Let's say I'm like, oh my gosh, I forgot that the hidden line layer was current, and I drew these objects, and I want them to be on the same layer as this right here. I have the match layer option or command, and I can pick this, and it tells me to select objects to be changed. So I'll pick these objects, and I'll hit enter because I'm all done selecting those objects, and then select an object on the destination layer, and I pick that, and then all those objects get moved to that layer. Kind of a nice little tool. Make current. If I say, geez, you know what, I'm on the dimensions layer, but I want to make this layer current, rather than pull this down and drag it out and look at everything, because, well, we've got a pretty simple layering scheme in this drawing, but you might have, 100 layers in a drawing. Rather than do that, I'll just pick make current, and then pick an object on a layer, and that layer becomes current. Now everything I draw from here on out is going to be on that layer. Quick properties, we've talked about that a little bit. I have my quick properties turned on. I also have the button visible. Again, you'd have to pick here and make sure it's visible. And then once it's visible, then pick it to turn it on. But Quick Properties shows properties for a particular object when you select it in a dialog box or a panel type thing. And what I typically use it for is to toggle on a layer or make a layer change with it. I can pick this, and if I want it to be on the object layer, I can just pull that down and pick it again, pull this down, put it on the center layer. You get the drift. Just another way to do it. No different than picking it up here or picking it from here or modifying it there. We can just use Quick Properties, use it right there. Little hint, this is a little known fact. If I want to move that onto the object layer, rather than picking to make that drop down available and then picking again and finding it and picking it out of here, understand that if you know your layering system well, you can just pick this, highlight that, and type in D, and you know that you're going to get that being placed back on the dimensions layer. I'll hit the escape key to let it go, and that's that. I think that's it for properties. So you got all sorts of tools for managing the properties of objects once you've set up your layering system in the first place.